kick off this session, I'd actually like to start by posing a quick question, which is, have you ever been in a Miro board and wished for a specific workflow or capability that you wished existed, but it didn't yet exist natively in Miro? Well, if you have, that's actually precisely where Miro Apps come in. And more specifically, the Miro Developer Platform, which is a way to expand on the capabilities and use cases that are already possible in the Miro we all know and love. So in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you how you can start exploring the world of Miro Apps and bootstrap a quick app that can be used to streamline asset management on your Miro board. Before I jump in, just a quick note about me. My name is Will Bishop, and I'm a developer advocate here at Miro. I'm really passionate about all things web development and product, especially when it comes to building Miro apps, which is why I'm really excited to dive into our developer platform today and show you how you can leverage it to tackle everyday workflows. So as I mentioned before, the chat is live. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in there and we'll try to address them as they come up. We'll also reserve time at the end. All right, so to ground today's session, I want to take a brief moment to introduce Miro's developer platform, which refers to the combined power of our Web SDK, our REST APIs, and our live embed. Today, we'll be focusing pretty much exclusively on our Web SDK, which is our primary front-end capability that allows you to create an app that runs directly on a Miro board. Although we won't get into too much detail on our REST API and our live embed capabilities today, for those of you who are curious, you might consider these for use cases around integrating Miro with a third party or embedding Miro directly on a web page, respectively. But all this to say that all three of our main capabilities here live separately from each other, but keep in mind that they could be, and often are, used in combination to build creative solutions that leverage one, two, or maybe all three of them. So with that in mind, let's get back to the Web SDK. So a bit more detail on our Web SDK. This is a JavaScript-based library that is accessible from directly within your browser's developer console on an open Miro board. But we also offer an NPM package to be able to create a new Web SDK app directly from your command line. So what does this actually look like, though? Well, the look and feel of an SDK app will vary depending on styling and functionality, but you will find that all SDK-based apps live in an app panel on the left-hand side of a Miro board. And these apps can have their own custom UI, modals, and a whole lot more. But you can access these directly from the left-hand toolbar that you're used to on a Miro board. All right, so what do you need to get started with building your own Web SDK app? Well, it's actually quite simple. As long as you have a Miro account and an IDE or a code editor, you can actually follow along as I walk through some steps now to create a developer app in Miro. So we're actually going to start in our developer hub, which is a one-stop shop for creating Miro apps, learning by example, earning badges, and a whole lot more. So let's go there now. Here we are in the developer hub, and you can see over here, we have a few different dedicated sections. At the top, we can manage any developer apps that we create in Miro. And then we have a section for app examples. So you can actually clone any of these example applications that we've created to help get you started more quickly and see what kind of use cases are most popular. We also have a section dedicated to onboarding to our platform and getting up to speed through some guided resources where you can track your progress. And then in a really fun kind of way, you can earn badges for certain actions you take on the developer platform. So whether that's making your first API request or participating in certain campaigns, this is a great way to feel like you're really part of a progression. So this is just a quick kind of high-level tour of our developer hub. But now I want to jump right into creating our first Miro app. So to do this, I'm just going to go ahead and click on create my first app. And this is going to ask me to name my developer app, and I'm just going to call it my new app. And then I'm going to go ahead and click create app. And then this is going to bring us to a developer app settings page where it generates a unique set of credentials for this developer app that we're creating. And for the Web SDK, this app URL section is really important because this is where it's going to pull our application into the Miro board. So for today's purposes, I'm just going to bootstrap a quick app on my machine locally. So we're using this localhost 3000 endpoint. But for like a production level app, this would be like an HTTPS endpoint that's live on production. One other thing to point out here from this page is every app will have permissions. So these are basically just scopes that signify what your app will have access to do on behalf of users who install it. So for today's purposes, we're going to build a simple kind of asset manager app, or clone one rather. And all we need to do is manage board content. So these boards read and boards write scopes are plenty for us. I'm going to go ahead now and install this application. And I'm going to install it under an existing team under my account. So I'll just go to this distributed webinar team and hit add. And I've got my app installed. So now what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go back to our developer hub. And if I just refresh the page real quick, you'll see that we can now see my new app here. So I've got all the credentials and the infrastructure that I need to be able to quickly bootstrap an app now. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to download one of our sample applications right here from the developer hub and show you just how quickly we can get this app up and running locally. So I've downloaded the app. I'm going to go over here to my desktop and just open this up in my code editor. And with my VS Code open, I'm going to go ahead and open my terminal. And you can see here, we've got a bunch of boilerplate files, all pre-built for us. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to run npm install to install dependencies for this demo application. And this takes just a moment. And then once these dependencies are installed, I'm going to go ahead and run npm start. And I can see that this app is now up and running on localhost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my Miro account, and I'm going to go to the team that I just started running this app under. I'm going to go to a board under that team. And then over here on the left-hand side where we see this toolbar, you can see that there's a More Apps button. I'll click here, and you'll see my new app right here at the bottom of all these apps. If I click on this, you can see that we have my new app up and running. And it's got a few kind of standard boilerplate images that we can actually drag and drop onto a Miro board. And this is going to just show this image on the board and kind of zoom into it. But this session is all about streamlining your workflows, right? So how can we take advantage of cloning a simple Miro app like this and using it to our advantage to make things easier? Let's imagine that maybe we were creating a presentation and we had a whole bunch of assets or images that we want to reuse in different places, and we want to bring them in from somewhere else. So I don't want to use these standard images that come along with this boilerplate. What I want to do is fill this application with a bunch of assets that are specific to a certain project that I'm working on, for example. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm actually going to go back to my app, and here in the source directory, the app.tsx file is where all these images that you're seeing on the board are living. So let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it a bit better. Each of these URLs represents one of these images in my application. And so for today's purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and replace these images with some images of my own that I have hosted on my own kind of site. So if I save this and I go back to my app, you can see now that I've got a new library of images that I can drag onto a Miro board. So this is like step one in being able to, streamline images that you want to work over and over again with on the board across teams. You can think of use cases like this. But actually, maybe we want to take it one step further, because if you're working with a ton of assets in Miro, you wouldn't want to have 100 images over here in this app panel and have to manually look through each of them to see what's going on. Instead, maybe we want to introduce something like a search bar where we can type in the name or some kind of description of the image we're looking for, and then narrow down the results. And for this, we actually have a guided tutorial that shows you how to do exactly that. It's called Add Search and Filter to a Miro App. And what it does is it walks you through how to take this example drag and drop app that we're working with so far and add this search functionality to it. So because we're a little limited on time, I'm not going to walk through this tutorial end to end. But what I do want to do is take our existing app and I want to modify it a little bit so that I can show you what this is going to look like. And the first thing I want to do is create a new component in my source directory. So I'll create a components folder. And then I'm going to create a new React component, and I'm going to call it input.tsx. And then I'm going to go ahead and just copy the snippet for this component right from one of our example apps and paste it here into my drag and drop example app. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So I've got this new component, which essentially just creates the input form for the search functionality that we're going to introduce. Now, I need to actually call this component in my app.tsx file, just like the main script that the app is running. And there's a few adjustments I need to make. First, I need to simply import that component that I just made. And then next, we're going to use the use state capability in React to save the user inputs for the form. I'm going to add that there. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to update these image URLs with some kind of additional parameters so that when we search by a keyword, it knows which image is associated to what keyword. If you're working with something like a digital asset manager, this is something that would be pretty standard to have this kind of metadata associated with an image. So I'll just take the examples that I've been using and add a few different parameters to those. And I'm going to go ahead and comment out the images that we have right now and paste in a new version that has the same URLs, but for each one, I now have a name and some tags. And then the very last thing that I need to do is I need to update what's going to be reflected in the UI when we go back to our board. So there's a return section here, and I'm just going to replace this with some updated code so that we are importing that component that includes the search input functionality and a bit of a filter. So now if we hit save, if we go back to our application, we'll see now that there's this search bar. And before we had nothing, so we had to manually kind of search everything just using our eyes. But now let's say we want a specific kind of asset. Maybe we want an image that reflects collaboration. So we can type in collab, and we'll see that we can now drag this collaboration image onto the board. Similarly, let's say, we want to look for something related to machine learning or something like that. Type in machine, and we've got this machine image. So you can see based on what we're dragging onto the board here, which it's a bit of a mess right now, but the idea is that you would have some kind of use case for reusing all sorts of different assets across the Miro board in different places. And you now got a situation where you can easily find them and easily access them all from within an app that you created just by cloning one of our example apps. So, what I've shown you here now is just an example of one way that you could streamline your workflows in Miro, but it doesn't stop here. And I've just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you can accomplish. So don't just take my word for it. Actually, we have a community of, hundreds of developers who, have built awesome apps and integrations on Miro. So you can find inspiration across our Discord, our GitHub, our YouTube, and more. And it's a great place to engage with these developers and also engage with us on the developer relations team to get, new ideas. And it looks like we've got a little bit of a frozen board here. Just going to quickly refresh. All right, so back to the presentation here. One other thing I want to mention quickly is that you can also get inspiration from our community of end users. So you can see common requests from members of the Miro community. And if you're looking for ideas to get started on your own app integration, our community wishlist is a great place to start. And with a potential audience of over 60 million users, who knows, your app could just be the next big thing. So, wrapping up here, if you're feeling inspired, I hope that you will keep exploring on how you can streamline everyday workflows with our developer platform. So really, I encourage you all to get your hands dirty and leverage all of the resources that we talked about today. You can find me on our Miro for Developers Discord server, as well as meet other developers who are building on Miro. And it's a great place to get inspiration, support, feedback, you name it. So with that, I hope you all continue to enjoy everything that Distributed has in store. And I would love to take a moment to answer any questions that we might have in the chat. All right. I see at least one question here about features and updates that might be coming to the Web SDK soon. This is a good question. Yeah. So as you can see here in what we've covered today, our Web SDK, we're focusing on some of the more simple methods, but in the future, we will be looking to evolve the functionality of the Web SDK to be more collaborative and offer more capabilities around collaborative sessions. So think of things like, voting or like the timer or being able to like bring people to you on a board, these kinds of actions that you can take, right in the UI when you click on a person and you go to them. These are the kind of collaborative experiences we hope to introduce in the Web SDK soon. And so keep an eye out for that. That's something that will be coming down the pike. Another question here. If I wanted to create an app that imported or exported board data, how would I do that? Yeah, that's a great question. That's another really good example of something that you could easily do to streamline some of the more manual processes that you might have regarding bringing content into a Miro board or out of a Miro board. There's a lot of different ways to do that. The primary way I would think to do that would be to use the REST API. So you can use our REST API, all accessible from developers.miro.com. And we have a comprehensive suite of API endpoints that you can leverage to read board content and export it to a third-party source. Or alternatively, you could read content from a third-party source and bring it into Miro by using our like create endpoints. So you can create items, you can create cards, all via API. So of all the integrations that we see on the left, these are Miro apps. Yes, that's a good question. So if you look over here and you go to this More Apps button, these are all apps and integrations. You can see here, there's some that are like custom apps like this one. I have the Asset Manager app, but we also have third-party apps like Google Images, Miro-built apps like stickers and emojis, but this is where you'll access any kind of custom app. Awesome, lots of great questions. I think we have one more question around, let's see. Looks like there was a question around AI. Yeah, like AI is a very popular topic. It would be cool to include AI in a Miro app. So any methods around this? Well, there's a lot of different ways you could combine the power of AI with the Miro developer platform. One of the ones that comes like top of mind is the use of like mind maps. So for example, if you're on a Miro board and you go to type in mind map, you can actually create mind map nodes right on a board, but you can do the same thing from an application. So if you have a mind map like this, you might imagine that you could type in like a prompt or something like that, and your app could call a service like ChatGPT or OpenAI and one of those, and guess at what should be the next mind map node. And you could use that to call our Web SDK or our REST API to create a new part of that mind map. I see another question here about organizations. So for my organization, if I need to develop an app, do I need to take admin permissions for the org or as a user of the org? I can still develop and test the app using my org resources. Yeah, this is a good question. So you don't need to be an admin to develop an app. Anybody can develop an app, and anyone can like create a developer application. There's a few nuances. If you're part of an enterprise account, there might be more restrictions. But the thing to keep in mind is that when you go to develop an app, certain things like these scopes, some of them might require like an enterprise plan. So depending on what kind of organization you are, you wouldn't necessarily be able to test your own app if you didn't have like an enterprise plan to use one of these scopes for like a corresponding endpoint. But for the most part, developing any kind of app is free to do so, and you can play around in a developer team without the worry of messing up any production data. Great question. Let's see. I think there might be one more question about using the Web SDK in conjunction with the REST API? And that is another good question. So you can use the Web SDK and the REST API together quite seamlessly. And actually, if you use our npx create Miro app command, which I can actually show you right here in the terminal. Let's say that I'm going to like my desktop and I want to create, let's say I want to create a new app. I can type in npx create Miro app. And if I run this, I can actually bootstrap a Miro app directly from the command line. And it'll ask me if I want to choose a specific framework. And if I choose this Next.js framework with the Web SDK and the API client installed, it'll walk me through creating a boilerplate application that actually already has all of the infrastructure needed to use them together. So that means when someone installs your Web SDK app, it automatically authorizes a REST API backend. Let's see, another question here. For the REST API, are there service level credentials that are not associated with a particular user? This is a good question. So this is probably a more common use case for like a large organization or an enterprise account where you don't want to necessarily associate one Miro user to a particular app that might be taking actions via API, for instance. And in these instances, we recommend setting up like a service account where you'll create the app under that service account. And that might be called like, something related to your IT team, which is probably going to be like some kind of company admin. So it's not a real person, but it's the account or user profile they would use to create the app, and therefore all the actions taken under that account. So there are ways to do that. It's typically done with that kind of service account approach. Great questions. So just in case you think of a question after this session and you're looking to learn more about Miro for developers, or what you can build with apps, how to streamline, what's going on in your daily workflow, you can always check out developers.miro.com, and you've got lots of resources around guides and tutorials, guided onboarding, all to help you get up to speed. But we also have, as I was saying, a Discord server, a YouTube channel, GitHub app examples. So please, reach out on those channels, and we'd love to engage with you and hear a bit more about what you're looking to build and how we can help. So I think we're just about at time here. It's been a pleasure to show you all, a bit more about how you can streamline workflows in Miro using our developer platform. And I hope you all enjoy Distributed. It's just starting basically, so enjoy the rest of the day, and hope to see you out there building Miro apps in the future. Thanks a lot for joining the session.